My sin was before me, I was swallowed by pride. But out of the darkness you brought me to your light. You showed me new mercy and opened up my eyes. From the day you saved my soul till the very moment when I come home, I sing, I dance, my heart will overflow. From the day you saved my soul. Yeah. Oh. When brilliant light is all around and endless joy is the only sound. Oh, rest my heart forever now. Oh, in your arms I'll always be found. From the day you saved my soul till the very moment when I come home, I sing, I dance, my heart will overflow. From the day you saved my soul. My love is yours, and my heart is yours, and my life is yours forever. One more time. My love is yours, my heart is yours, my life is yours forever. From the day you saved my soul until the very moment when I come home, I sing, I dance, my heart will overflow. From the day you saved my soul, from the day you saved my soul till the very moment when I come home, I sing, I dance, my heart will overflow. From the day you saved my soul. Let's go. Amen, amen. Hey, it's really good to have Matt and Megan and Brandon back with us tonight. So, yeah, what do you think, these guys? Thank you for being here. Amen. You can be seated. And at this time, I would ask if our ushers would prepare to come and take our offering. And God, we're just thankful for all that we have, all that you've given us. Lord, sometimes it may not feel like enough. But God, will it ever be enough? But we have today. We have this community. We have breath in our lungs. May we forever be thankful. I love you, Jesus.
ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. You father the orphan, your kindness makes us whole. You shoulder my weakness, and your strength becomes our own. You're making me like you, clothing me in white, bringing beauty from ashes. For you will have your bride, free of all her guilt, and rid of all her shame, and known by her true name. And it's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. And it's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips.
Amen. Thank you, guys. So I figured I would read tonight's passage since it is the shortest one that we will be looking at throughout this whole series. I think the past verses have been lengthy, or passages have been lengthy verses, and there's been a lot in them. And so I figured I'd go from one extreme to the other. And here is just one verse for us of James, verse 12. Above all, my beloved, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, so that you may not fall under condemnation. The word of the Lord. Let's pray. Gracious God, as I stand up here to preach, I trust that you are already in this place. I've experienced your Holy Spirit's presence in this place as we have already engaged in worshiping you. And so as I begin to speak and teach on your word, on this scripture, may I get out of the way. May any of the distractions that I am to any of the folks that are sitting here, any of the distractions that are on my heart, may they be set aside so that we can hear from you in this time. That you will speak to us in the way that we need to hear from you individually as well as a community. So come, Holy Spirit, come and open our ears to receive this message that you have for us tonight. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen. So if you were just joining us tonight, we are in the last 2 weeks of our sermon series on the book of James. We have spent I think, kind of the past 2 months, or a good bit of the past 2 months, focusing on this letter, making our way through this letter, a letter written by James, the brother of Jesus, written to various churches that are all over. They're spread all out. And we've covered a variety of themes, and we've covered a variety of topics along the way, received various teaching and instruction from James that can be applied to our lives, helping to equip us to live out our faith genuinely, authentically, and also effectively. This week, we're making our way into the final chapter of James' letter, and our scripture for tonight, as I mentioned, is just one small verse, chapter 5, verse 12. But while it is one small verse, James makes a pretty big point. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the topic of swearing. So let me ask you, what comes to mind when you think of swearing, when you hear swearing? Honestly, what comes to mind? Cuss words. That's what comes to mind with me. We have a picture that will show the explicit language warning that you often got on a CD. Not that I listen to that music. It was my friends, of course. When I hear swearing or someone talking about swearing, it's watching your mouth, the 4-letter words, cussing, profanity. That's one understanding that we have, okay? But there's something else that comes to my mind when I think of swearing or this word. And what comes to mind is by the band All for One, the song title, I Swear. Who's familiar with this song? A couple? A lot of people. I like it, which means you get to sing along because we're going to hear, if you haven't heard it, we're going to hear a brief sample of All for One, I Swear.
I swear by the moon and the stars in the skies.
Here he goes again.
And I swear like the shadow that's by your side.
Does that not take you back?
I see red.
Come on. All right, yeah, cut it. I was going to go through the whole song. Homecoming dance, just dancing, All for One. It is a good song, and later they just kind of started off that way, but it's I swear by the moon and the stars in the sky, and then he says, I'll be there. I swear like the shadow that's by your side, I'll be there for better or worse, till death do us part. I'll love you with every beat of my heart, I swear. So it's cussing and All for One that comes to my mind when I hear the word swearing. To be completely clear, tonight's passage is not a message about profanity. It's not a message about explicit language. And James is definitely not referring to the 1994 hit song by All for One titled I Swear, promising unending romantic love for the person they are with. Instead, in chapter 5, verse 12 of James' letter, he's referring to oaths. The swearing that he's talking about here, that he's writing about here, has to do with oaths. The definition of to swear or swearing is to make a solemn, meaning a formal statement or promise. To make a formal statement or promise to either do something or a promise or statement that something is in fact true. Now, just a heads up to you tonight, we're not going to be looking at this from the lens of the courtroom or the judicial system. We're not going to be looking at it from the promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. We're not going to be looking at this from the lens of maybe the banks or the lending companies signing a promissory note, promising to pay a specified amount of money. Instead, we're going to be looking at this in a much more simplified and everyday form. We're going to be looking at this from the lens of the church, exploring why James includes this one verse in his letter to these churches and why the church is to apply this teaching. Okay? Let's take a look. Again, I'm going to read the verse. It begins and ends like this. Above all, my beloved, which is brothers and sisters, friends, however you look at it. Above all, my beloved, do not swear either by heaven or earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, so that you may not fall under condemnation. Now, this is a standalone verse, and it seems to be just kind of thrown in there haphazardly. Because in the first 11 verses of chapter 5 and the verses leading up to this one, James doesn't speak anything about oaths. He doesn't speak anything about vows or promises or swearing of any sort. Rather, James begins chapter 5 talking about rich oppressors, and then he writes about having patience in the midst of suffering. He writes against grumbling against one another. And so it could appear that this topic of swearing and oaths is maybe just not all that important to James, and he in fact is just kind of squeezing it in there at the end of his letter and throwing it in last minute because he needed some place for it to land. However, that's not the case at all. And James lets us know this. He begins this verse writing, above all, my beloved, do not swear. Above all, meaning above or beyond all other circumstances. It's his way of saying this is important. This is of high value. Do not just breeze past this. Above all, here's what I want you to do. And just as he has been doing throughout most of his letter, James is once again moving on to emphasize the significance or the importance of speech, the words that we say. And we've seen this throughout the series. We've seen it in the previous chapters up to this point in the letter. James has let us know that our words and our speech reveals what is truly within our hearts. He's taught us that our speech gives evidence to the living faith that is within us. And we've learned that our words have power to build up and also power to tear down. And so here it's really no surprise that James is emphasizing once again the importance of speech. But I think there is another reason for this brief teaching point that he throws in here in chapter 5. And I think the reason is that Jesus taught on the same exact message. Jesus, in fact, said words that were identical to what James is saying here, and so it's of great value and importance. If we were to look at Matthew's gospel, Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 37, the words will be on the screen, we find what Jesus has to say about it, and it's pretty much the same exact thing that we find in James. There's a little bit of differences, but here are these words from Matthew 5, 33 through 37. Jesus says, "Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'Do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made.' But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it's God's throne, or by earth, for it's his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one." Did y'all pick up on some of the similarities that we find in James and here in Matthew? James is simply repeating the teaching and the words of his brother Jesus. Almost verbatim, James is sharing what Jesus previously taught. Therefore, even though it's kind of thrown in there and it's an oddly placed verse in chapter 5, this is important teaching. This is Christ-centered teaching. This is teaching that Christ taught. And there's something else that we find when we kind of cross-reference James 5:12 and Matthew 5. When we look at the words in Matthew 5, we discover a little bit more detail as to the reason for this teaching, and we find a little bit more information as to why this teaching is so important. Did you notice at the beginning, or it's still on the screen, look at the first verse. "Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago," what? "Do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made." Which leads us to believe what? This means that there was previous teaching on the fact that swearing and vows and oaths were encouraged, and also teaching on the importance of keeping one's oath, fulfilling the vows that one has made in the Lord's name. Do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. You see, Jesus is not just making some assumption here, saying, yeah, you've heard it before. Jesus is referencing and referring to the scriptures. There are Old Testament scriptures throughout that actually support the use of oaths. A few examples: Deuteronomy 6:13 says, "Fear the Lord your God, serve him only, and take your oaths in his name." Isaiah 65:16, "Whoever takes an oath in the land will swear by the one true God." A couple more, Leviticus 19:12, you shall not swear by my name falsely, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. And then Deuteronomy 23:23 reads, be careful to follow through on what comes from your lips, because you have freely vowed to the Lord your God with your own mouth. See, in the Old Testament, in Old Testament times, swearing and making an oath before God was both acceptable and common practice. In the Old Testament, rather than teaching against swearing and making oaths, one's commitment to an oath or a vow was emphasized. Therefore, if we come back to Matthew 5, we find some of the significance. What we discover in Matthew 5 is that Jesus introduces a radically new way of thinking. Jesus introduces in that text a very different perspective and understanding regarding oaths. It's like Jesus is saying there, you've heard it said before, you've been taught something else before. The law has previously allowed for you to swear and to make oaths, but he says, but I tell you this. I tell you, do not swear to any oath at all, either by heaven or by earth or Jerusalem or anything. No longer swear. Make vows and make oaths. So the question for us is why? Right? Why does Jesus all of a sudden kind of come along here and change things up? Why is Jesus switching it up on them? And friends, the reason is this. People in that time were using their oaths for personal advantage. That while oaths should foster truthful communication and honest agreement, oaths were actually being used as a facade for lying and manipulating people around them. You see, the Talmud, which is the book containing the Jewish law, had elaborate rules regarding oaths. And these rules were somewhat inconsistent and confusing, which means, in general, oaths were somewhat inconsistent and confusing as well. The law stated that if you were to use God's name in an oath, then you had to keep it. If you were to use God's name in an oath, you had to keep it. But if you swore to a lesser something, then that oath could be broken. You were not bound to it. Meaning what? Some oaths had to be kept, and others could be broken. You see, in this time when Jesus was walking the earth in Jesus' day, it had become common for many of the Jewish people to swear to almost anything that they said. And as a result, oaths began to lose their significance. They began to lose their meaning, and they were just being used in everyday situations instead of formal agreements alone. So swearing and making oaths became more like a tool for persuasion or convincing someone than a real promise or a commitment. It was an attempt to appear or make your words appear to be more believable, and oaths no longer bound someone to speaking the truth or fulfilling a promise. During this time, oaths were being used for self-interest and self-gain and kind of getting what you want, kind of fingers crossed behind your back as you say, yeah, I promise, I swear. So Jesus comes along and says, not anymore. While this once was acceptable, now it's not. He basically comes along and says, from this point forward, do not swear or make oaths of any kind. Right? And the reason being that oaths have become disingenuous. They're deceitful, and they're forms of manipulation. And so let's think about that for a minute, because while I believe this was a cultural change for the Jewish people in Jesus' day, this was kind of a shock and some new teaching, I also think it's a culture change that very much applies to us here today. See, we live in a society that is fueled by self-interest and deceit and manipulation. We hear people say, I swear to God, or I swear to this, or I swear to that, I swear on my mama's grave, I swear. And we're just convincing people that we're right, that we're telling the truth, that we're being honest. People make promises and oaths with absolutely no intention of keeping them, looking for loopholes so that they can get out of that promise or that contract and agreement. People lie and deceive all the time to make their way to the top or get what they want. People say that they will do one thing and then go and do the exact opposite. We live in a society where people swear and promise either to each other, a spouse, a boss, you name it, and then turn right around and break it. I'm sure as I'm rattling these off, you're thinking of a time when maybe you have broken a promise, a vow, an oath to someone close to you, or someone close to you doing the same to you. Friend, the same stuff that we're experiencing now was taking place back in the day. And this is the reason that James puts this in this letter. This is the reason that he repeats Jesus' teaching to the churches and said, no more swearing, no more trickery, no more deceit, no more manipulation among you, no more false promises. And then in the next part of this one verse, James goes on to explain what they are to do instead. Writing, let your yes be yes, and your no be no. Simply let your yes be yes, and your no be no. Which is another way of telling them, say what you mean and mean what you say. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Let your yes be yes, and your no be no. Friends, it is a call for the church to be truthful. It is a call for the church to be honest, truthful and honest with one another. And we're sitting here thinking, yes, that's right. That's what we're supposed to do. Be truthful and be honest, and let our yes be yes and our no be no. And this sounds good, and this looks good on paper and reading it in the Bible, and it may seem doable. But being 100% truthful and honest, if we're truthful and honest, can be challenging to live out. Would you agree? You ever been in one of those situations where somebody asked you to be honest and you did not want to be honest at all? Or if you were honest, they would offend them or it would hurt their feelings? When somebody says, tell me the truth, you know what I'm talking about? When I'm thinking of that, I think of the Geico commercial. It's a Geico commercial from a few years back with Abraham Lincoln. Not actually Abraham Lincoln, but it's pretending that it's Abraham Lincoln and his wife getting ready, getting dressed for an evening. You know, honest Abe can't tell a lie. In the commercial, they're getting ready, and she's in front of the mirror, and she's asking, you know, does this make me look big? Or she asks some sort of question, and then he kind of fumbles around and wastes time awkwardly trying to find something true to say that won't get him in trouble or damage his marriage. Have you seen that commercial? Well, let's watch it.
Could switching to Geico really save you 15% or more on car insurance? Was Abe Lincoln honest?
Does this dress make my backside look big?
Perhaps it
Could switching to Geico...
Perhaps a little after a long pause. The dangerous trap. And in those situations, do not be honest. Just avoid it or say, I have no comment, or just dodge it however you need to. That's not lying. That's not being dishonest. It's avoiding conflict, which we've talked about in this series. I know this Geico commercial is silly. I know it's superficial, but I think it points to the challenge that we find in speaking the truth and being 100% honest at all times, right? It's tough. It's difficult, whether it's in superficial ways like this or in genuine ways, meaningful, real ways that have impacts on people's lives and our lives. It's tough. And what James is suggesting here is that the words we speak, what we say, should be absolutely true. That we should speak the truth, that we should be honest, say what we mean, when? At all times. If you say yes, then you mean yes. If you say no, then you mean no. And don't let any of that other fluff or kind of wishy-washy stuff get in the way that will confuse or manipulate the honest truth. It's what James is suggesting here. It's challenging. It's tough. It's not always easy. But why are we to do this? Why are we to let our yes be yes and our no be no, and to be truthful and honest? Because anything more, anything that goes beyond a simple yes or no often gets us into trouble. When we skirt around the truth, or when we mince our words together, we end up doing more harm than good for the situation, or for ourselves and for others and for relationships. When we spend our energy and make efforts to convince and twist and manipulate and deceive others, we end up breaking trust, actually revealing that we cannot be trusted, and damaging relationships. Sir Walter Scott famously said, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." Do we have it on the screen? Do we have that up there? Because I obviously can't say it. "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." Think about this. I mean, has this been true in your life? Has this been true for you or for others around you? I know it's been true in mine. Friends, when we're dishonest, when we're deceitful and manipulative, we become entangled in this web of lies and deception that's hard to get out of. When we're dishonest and deceitful and manipulative, we end up tricking the people around us, putting their needs behind our gain or our interest and what we want, getting what we want, rather than considering what the other person needs or how they might be thinking. We see this in marriages, we see this in friendships, we see this in business, we see this in politics, we see this in the church in general, not speaking to anything specific here, but in the church, we see it everywhere. When we do not speak the truth or simply say things that we do not mean, we usually end up hurting people that are close to us, and we push them away, create divisions, create barriers, create conflict, which we talked about. When we make false promises, when we're dishonest with people or stretch the truth, we end up with hurt feelings and broken relationships, strained relationships, manipulated outcomes that aren't all that great because they got there by deceitful practices. We end up with unnecessary arguments with others, self-centered disputes. And James comes along here in verse 12 of chapter 5 and says, remember what Jesus taught and stop it. Stop doing this. Otherwise, you'll set yourself up to be judged by others and judged by God for these actions. Friends, in Matthew 5:33 through 37, Jesus changes things up quite a bit. Jesus changes things up in an attempt to invite his followers into a new way of living. Jesus didn't come along and just teach a new set of rules for the law, or which rules are to be followed when and how we're to keep them, or when we can break them. Instead, Jesus pointed to the type of life that the law aimed to produce but could not produce. Jesus invited his followers in that time to live under a new set of rules, to enter into a new way of life, a new way of living and engaging one another. Friends, in Matthew 5, Jesus invites his followers to live a life, to begin living a life that is honest and a life that is true at all times, without exceptions, not conditional on, did you say I swear or promise or hand up or hand on the Bible or anything like that, all times, without exceptions. And so what we find here in this portion of James' letter, James 5:12, is basically a reminder of the same. That it's more than just a carelessly placed verse that had to be thrown in there somewhere. It's truly an important verse that is a call for the church to be honest and true in their lives and relationships and their interactions as a church community. James is encouraging the churches that he's writing to remember what Jesus taught and to remember this way of life that Jesus invites them, and us to fall into. James is reminding the church to embody Christ's teaching, to live that life out truthfully and honestly as followers of Christ. That is the message that James had in this one verse for the churches that he's writing to, and I'm hoping that in this one verse we will feel and receive and own this message for ourselves tonight. You see, truth and honesty is an essential characteristic of the Christian life. It is essential to who we are as Christ followers, who we strive to be as Christ followers. And truth and honesty is essential to the way in which we engage in interactions and in relationships and business deals and conversations as Christians, as the church. You see, the church is to be a community that speaks the truth, that speaks honestly by living it out. Meaning that our truthfulness is not marked, like I said, by saying, oh, I swear. Well, is it to God or something on the earth? It's not marked by us saying, I swear or I promise. Instead, our truthfulness is marked by consistently, even constantly speaking what is true in our hearts, by saying what we mean and meaning what we say, letting our yes truly be yes and our no. I've heard it said before that we don't tell the truth because we've taken an oath. We tell the truth because we're truthful people. It's simple, but I think it's profound. We don't tell the truth for some extra reason or because of something that we've added on or by saying I swear or I promise or taking an oath. We tell the truth because deep down in our hearts, we are truthful people or aim and strive to be truthful people. And I think that connects to some of the moves that James has made throughout this letter. I mean, just like he's done throughout most of this letter, James implies here in this text, as we've kind of looked through it and searched through it, that our actions and our words, what we do and what we say, reveals what is in our heart. If we're dishonest and deceitful and manipulative, then we will be dishonest and deceitful and manipulative in all of our ways. But if our hearts are pure and if our hearts are true, then we will speak truth, saying yes when we mean yes and no when we mean no. And to take it a step further, if our hearts are continually being shaped by Christ, if our lives are continually being centered on Christ's teaching and centered around following in the footsteps of Christ, then our lives and our words will show it. What we say, how we say it, and what we mean will be revealed. And we will live honestly, and we will live truthfully, saying yes when we mean yes and no when we mean no, allowing absolutely no room for false promises and dishonesty and deception and manipulation anywhere in our lives and in our hearts and our words and our relationships. Amen? I want to invite the band to come back up at this time, and if you're new with this, what we do in this time as we close worship during the final song is engage in prayer and reflection. And this isn't anything that is corporate, except that we're all together. It is personal in the sense that this is your time with God. The altar will be open during the final song, and feel free. You're invited to come forward and to spend some prayer time at the altar, to remain seated. I tell people it doesn't matter whether you're here or there. What matters is the condition of your heart. I hope that you are connecting with God and listening to how God is speaking to you in this text, how God is speaking to you in worship tonight. And then maybe shifting to offer words and offer prayers to God and speaking to God, connecting with God in this time on what you're sensing in your heart and in your spirit tonight. And as we close, I want to invite you to think to yourself. Think about your life. Right? We've done this before. You know where I'm going with this. Just think, close your eyes if you need to, and just reflect on your life, on yourself. Are you a person whose words can be trusted? Are you a person whose words can be trusted? Do people see you as an honest person? As someone who speaks the truth? Hopefully speaking the truth in love, and hopefully speaking the truth gently and in the best interest of someone else. But are you honest? Are you true? Can your words be trusted? As James and Jesus, not in that order, put it, is your yes, yes, and your no, no. Do you say what you mean and mean what you say, or is there deception in there? Is there manipulation and self-interest in your interactions and your conversations and the things that you say? Friends, in tonight's passage, James invites us to reflect on the words of Christ, writing, above all, my beloved. Above all, brothers and sisters, above all, my friends, do not swear. Do not swear either by heaven or by earth or any other oath. Simply let your yes be yes and your no be no. May that be our prayer tonight as we look to accept this invitation that Jesus offered and offers to us to begin to live a new way of life. Living a life that is both honest and true in everything that we say and do. Amen. The altar is open.
Give life, you I love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken, and great are you. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Give life, you I love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken, and great we pour out our praise, it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise, it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour let's sing this last part together. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Oh, can you hear us, God? And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Oh, from the depths of our hearts we cry. Oh, and all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great. In our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise, it's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only, it's your breath in our lungs, so we pour shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Yes, God. Sing it one more time. Oh, and all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Oh, just sing it to him. It's your breath. 'Cause it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only.
And all God's people said, amen. Amen. It was a great evening of worship. I'm glad that you were here again. If you were a first-time guest, if you're a visitor, would love for you to join us again next week. We're extremely glad that you're here with us and hope you enjoyed this time of worship. I have a few brief announcements. First announcement being that Celebrate Recovery, instead of meeting over here for large group, from now on, we're going to go straight to our groups. And so on the second floor are our groups. If you were wondering where you should go or what room they're meeting in, is Sarah Mullins in here? She is in the back corner, and she has her hand up. And if you have questions, feel free after the service to ask Sarah, and she'll help get you to the right place. Our Connection Point groups meet throughout the campus. The youth and Rooted are over in the warehouse. Our women's group's in the parlor, and our men's group is in 308, a new location from last week. The last main announcement is the Shuffleboard fundraiser is October 7th. Mark your calendars, save your money, get your bellies ready for some good food, some fun. It's going to be a great event, and it goes to support this wonderful ministry at The Point. So I hope you will come and invite your friends, family, anyone. We have a registration link and website that is about to go live, and that's how we're going to do it this year. So stay tuned. Last brief announcement is if you're wondering, can you swear when you leave here? Yes. The only thing you can swear is when you're in the car and you're singing All for One on the ride home. You can belt that out. Everything else, it's off limits. Good evening of worship. We close each week with a serenity prayer. The words will be on the screen. Let us close in prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did the sinful world as it is and not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen.